The Barn and the Book. Chapter 4. Saucer was very good at paying attention. When Saucer paid attention to anything, he stood perfectly still, staring intently, nose flaring, ears pointing forward as if he were beaming out corgi brainwaves. When Saucer stared at Sam like this, Sam almost felt like Saucer could read his thoughts. "That dog stares at you a lot. Does he think you're going to give him a treat?" asked Matthew, perched on the log fence that encircled the animal farm. Sam grunted. He was sitting on the ground inside the fence next to Saucer's red doghouse. "I mean, look at him," said Matthew. "If you even move a finger, he twitches his head the same direction." Sam grinned suddenly and pulled off his mittens. He wiggled a finger. Saucer's eyes flicked after it. His nose twitched. Sam wiggled a finger on his other hand. Saucer's whole head twitched. He raised a front paw. Matthew slid backwards, hanging by his knees from the fence. "World upside down!" He laughed and crossed his eyes as the blood rushed to his face. "Oof!" He hoisted himself back up. Saucer and Sam looked at each other. Saucer threw up his nose and yowled. Both boys laughed. "It's almost like he's human," said Matthew, regaining his seat on top of the fence. "He looks like he could talk." "I don't need him to talk," said Sam. He patted the furry spot between Saucer's pointed ears. Saucer turned his head to lick Sam's face. "That dog loves you," said Matthew. "But still, wouldn't it be cool if he could talk?" "I guess," said Sam. "I already know what he's saying." "Would it sound like barking?" wondered Matthew. He tried it out in a barky sort of voice. "Arf! I'm Sauce Arf! The dog Arf!" Sam rolled his eyes. Saucer barked. "See? He knows I'm talking about him." Matthew slid off the fence and reached a hand to pat Saucer. Saucer flipped his head and sniffed Matthew's hand instead. "You have to give him your hand to smell first," Sam explained. "Don't just reach for his head like that." Matthew crouched on the ground and leaned his back against the fence. "Elias says the animals can talk at midnight on Christmas Eve." Sam snorted. "For real? He says it happens every year, for 1 hour, at midnight." "Where did he get that story?" "It's a miracle," said Matthew. "He heard it someplace, at church, I think. Or maybe not at church. In a book? I don't know, but it's true." Sam looked at Saucer. Saucer snuffed and let his tongue hang out. "How do you know it's true?" asked Sam. "Well, I never heard the animals talk, but you can look it up. There are books and stuff, so somebody must have heard them. It's because Christ was born." Sam frowned. He didn't know much about Christ being born, but he knew it was a big deal. Matthew saw the frown. "Do you think it couldn't happen? Miracles can happen. The sisters talk about miracles all over the place." Sam had been coming to the monastery for less than a year, but even he had heard the sisters talking about miracles. "Did the sisters ever see any?" he asked. "Of course they did. They're nuns." Sam had a vague feeling that this was a good point. Matthew stood up. "Here comes Elias with Grace." He clambered over the fence and ran down the path toward his older brother. Sam watched Grace and Elias talk to Matthew. Elias dug something out of his pocket, and Matthew reached out his hand for it. They talked for a few minutes, and Grace skipped around them, interrupting. Then Elias looked over his shoulder, and all 3 children ran down the path toward Sam. "It's true, Sam," said Elias, as they reached the gate of the animal farm. "Matthew says he told you about the animals at midnight on Christmas Eve." "I want to hear them," shrieked Grace. "I have so many questions. I want to talk to the goats and the bunnies and the donkey." "What do you think they would say?" "Does it mean we can hear them, or just that they can talk?" "Could even beetles talk? Or worms?" "Well," said Elias, considering, "I don't know about beetles and worms, but maybe. Probably anything with a mouth." Grace was enchanted. "I'm going to stay up on Christmas Eve with a beetle and see if it can talk. I could interview a beetle, or a goat, and write my story for the book about what it said." Elias grinned at her. "That would be cool," he agreed. He turned to his brother. "Come on, Matthew, let's go find Mom. If they don't get done painting pretty soon, I'm going to miss my soccer game." The brothers started down the path. Grace stayed where she was, watching Sam and Saucer. "That's a nice dog," said Grace. coming closer to the gate. "Mm-hmm," said Sam, keeping his eyes on Saucer. Grace stepped onto the bottom rail of the fence and rested her elbows on the top rail, gazing at Sam and Saucer with round, friendly eyes. "Is he your dog?" she asked. "Sort of," said Sam. "He lives here, but he's mine when I'm here." "That's the best," said Grace. "Does he do tricks?" Sam looked up briefly. "When he wants to." Grace swung on the gate, tipping her head back and letting the air whisk her braids back and forth. "Maybe Saucer will talk on Christmas Eve. Saucer could talk to you on Christmas Eve if you were here." Sam said nothing. He patted Saucer over and over, and Saucer rested his head on Sam's lap. "You'll be here. All of us will be," continued Grace. "We'll be here for the service, and then we're going to stay overnight in the guest house. I heard your mom tell my mom." "I know," said Sam. "Church on Christmas morning." Grace nodded. "So, we could hear Saucer talk on Christmas Eve." Sam looked up. "What do you mean?" Grace jumped off the gate. "We could stay up. We could come to the animal farm and stay up, and when it was midnight, we would hear the animals talk. Then we would know it was true." Sam lowered his head again and went back to patting Saucer. "Maybe." Grace waited for Sam to say something else, but he didn't. She swung on the gate for a minute more. She wondered if her mother would let her paint if it was just for a few minutes at the very end. Like now, for example. What if she asked her now? "I'm going to find my mom," she announced. She jumped off the gate and ran down the path, leaving Sam and Saucer alone by the doghouse. Sam sighed. Saucer licked his hand. "I don't think it's true," said Sam. "But if anyone's going to hear you talk, it's not going to be her." Saucer barked. "It's going to be me, Saucer. Don't do it for anyone else, okay?"